Chapter 18, Face to Face. Immediately after giving me his promise that our meeting was going to be confined to the verbal arena, my old friend turned and began to continue the walk towards the parking lot. His promise was received by my ears, but was rejected outright by my heart. You might wonder why I kept walking, why I didn't turn around and head back to the safety of the restaurant. This question ignores something that's strangely resident in human nature, something twisted and broken. Human nature has the uncanny knack to deceive itself against the obvious. We tell ourselves that we will be the exception, that everyone else will be the rule. Or we pick out the exceptions and make them our rule. Smoking kills, but it won't get me. Other people's marriages end because they fail to communicate or invest in each other's life, but mine will be just fine. I can still live a self-centered life and my marriage will still endure and prosper. Worst of all, even though everyone knows that we are all going to die one day, we somehow push this to the back of our minds, ignoring its inevitability. Why do we do these things? Because we have no other plan. We have set ourselves in motion and we keep going in the same direction because the easiest path is the one that we are on now, no matter how dreadful the destination may seem. As I followed the man in front of me, my heart was not comforted by his promise. I had been a criminal long enough to know that it was mere folly to trust another criminal, even one I used to call a friend. They say that trust is something that can take years to build, but it takes mere seconds to tear down. It takes only one act of unfaithfulness to shatter years of trust between a husband and wife. Even if forgiveness is given, it doesn't bring back the level of trust that was there before. The trust must be won back, slowly, over time, through fidelity and steadfastness. Similarly, it only takes one lie to unravel months or even years of business relations that were thought to be based on mutual honesty. Once the lie is exposed, it's very hard to ever regain the lost trust. How can the offended party really know if the apology is authentic or if the betrayal will be repeated? If trust once lost is almost impossible to regain, imagine trying to believe someone where trust never existed. Try placing your trust in someone whose livelihood flows from a variety of criminal activities, a person who exhibits habitual dishonesty. How does one trust the untrustworthy? Soon, we were at the end of the corridor. I knew that the only obstacle between me and the dreaded parking lot was a small lobby. My old friend opened the glass door and held it for me to walk through. I stepped through expecting the worst. As I went to open the doors that led out into the night, my old friend's voice stopped me. "Let's talk in here," he said calmly. Gladly, I stopped and let the door spring shut. I positioned myself so that my back was against the wall, facing toward my old friend. "You stole a lot from me that night, Dale," he said. "You stole over a pound of coke from me. I've killed people for stealing an ounce." His eyes bored deep into mine. Even though I never let the thought show on my face, a part of me doubted what he said. I knew that he was extremely violent and that he had physically hurt many people, but I didn't think he had actually killed anyone. I would find out later that my guess was very wrong indeed. In response to his warning, I nodded my head solemnly, giving him my utmost attention. "You know how important friends and loyalty are to me, don't you, Dale? If I thought for a second that you knew it was my stuff when you took it, it would be over for you," he informed me with a gravity that chilled my heart. Again, I nodded my head, showing I clearly understood and agreed. "But you came tonight. You didn't leave him to come alone." He pointed his finger toward the restaurant where my associate was still sitting. "By coming tonight, you have shown me that you are still a loyal friend. You didn't leave your friend to come alone." He continued in a business-like voice. "I believe you when you say that you didn't know it was my stuff and you brought everything back." I stood there in silence, listening intently to every word he spoke. I quickly realized it wouldn't be wise to reveal that I almost hadn't come, to share the intense struggles that finally led to our place of meeting. I didn't want to say anything that would incriminate me further and worsen my punishment. Even though I was the poster boy for foolishness, I tried to appear wise by keeping my lips tightly shut. My friend paused for a moment and simply stood looking at me as if he were trying to figure out a difficult puzzle. Was he expecting me to say something? Those two guys who left the restaurant earlier tonight were hitmen from Vancouver. If you hadn't come tonight, they would have found you and brought you to me, he said, deadly serious. Again, he paused and looked at me. At that point in my life, I had worked in a nightclub for 5 years as a bouncer. I had seen many people who seemed fairly normal when they came into the club transform into wild, uncontrollable animals. As they poured more and more alcohol down their throats, it seemed to throw a switch in their brain that totally changed their behavior. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde syndrome. At that moment, my old friend, silently staring at me with complete business-only solemnity, suddenly changed. A switch went off inside of him. After 5 years of observing humanity in its debased, drunken, frenzied state, I thought that I could no longer be shocked by any human behavior. But the switch that went off in my old friend's head that night in the little lobby threw him into a state that was shocking, unexpected, and unbelievable, even to a veteran doorman who had seen it all.